The blood on her hands wasn't hers, but the debt it created might as well have been written in her own veins. And as Luna Kerrigan stood at the edge of the ravine outside Knight's Ferry, California in the summer of 1876, she knew there was only one way to settle accounts with men like the Carson brothers. The wind whipped her dark hair across her face as she stared down at the rocky bottom nearly 100 feet below. Behind her, she could hear the horses approaching, their hooves thundering against the sun-baked earth. She had maybe 2 minutes before they reached her. 2 minutes to decide if she wanted to face what they would do to her or take her chances with gravity and stone. Her father had been a good man, a dreamer who thought he could strike it rich in the California goldfields even though the easy pickings were long gone. Instead, he had struck up a friendship with whiskey and gambling, and when he died 3 months ago from fever, he left Luna with nothing but a dress, a pair of worn boots, and a debt of $3,000 to men who collected in blood when cash ran short. She closed her eyes and thought of her mother, dead these past 10 years. At least she would see her again soon. "I would not do that if I were you," a voice said from somewhere to her left. Luna's eyes snapped open and she spun around, nearly losing her balance on the crumbling edge. A man sat astride a paint horse about 20 yards away, partially hidden by a cluster of manzanita bushes. He wore a dusty black hat pulled low, a dark vest over a faded blue shirt, and had the weathered look of someone who spent more time under the sun than under a roof. "Stay back," Luna warned, though her voice shook. "The Carson brothers will be here any second. If they find you talking to me, they'll kill you too." The man urged his horse forward slowly, his hands visible and relaxed on the reins. As he came closer, Luna could see he was young, perhaps 25 or 26, with a strong jaw shadowed by a few days of stubble and eyes the color of aged whiskey. A gun belt hung at his hip, but he made no move toward the weapon. "I know who the Carsons are," he said calmly. "And I know they have been terrorizing this county for the better part of 2 years, while the sheriff looks the other way, because Marcus Carson keeps his pockets lined with silver." "Then you know why I have to jump," Luna said. The sound of the approaching horses was getting louder. "They'll do worse than kill me for what I did." "What did you do?" Luna's jaw tightened. "I killed Wade Carson. He came to collect my father's debt, said he'd take it in trade since I didn't have the money. When he tried to force himself on me, I grabbed a kitchen knife and I stabbed him. I didn't mean to kill him, I just wanted him to stop, but he bled out before I could even think about what to do." The man studied her for a long moment, and Luna saw something shift in his expression, something that looked almost like recognition, though they had never met before. "So rather than let his brothers have their revenge, you decided to finish their work for them," he said. "I decided to die on my own terms," Luna shot back. The thunder of hooves was very close now. The man looked past her toward the sound, then back to her face. "I have a different idea," he said, extending his hand toward her. "Come with me, right now." Luna stared at his outstretched hand like it was a snake. "I don't even know who you are." "My name is Xander Voss, and I promise you that if you take my hand right now, the Carson brothers will not touch you. Not today, not ever." "You can't promise that. Nobody can stand against them." "I can, and I am." His eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "But we are running out of time, so you need to decide right now. Jump, or take my hand and share your life with me instead of throwing it away." Luna heard shouts behind her, male voices, angry and getting closer. She looked at the ravine, then at Xander Voss with his impossible promise and his steady hand, and something inside her that had been ready to surrender suddenly flickered back to life. She lunged forward and grabbed his hand. Xander's grip was iron strong as he hauled her up behind him on the horse in one smooth motion. Before she could even wrap her arms around his waist, he had kicked the paint into a gallop, angling away from the ravine and into the broken canyon country that stretched east of Knight's Ferry. "There she is," a voice roared behind them, "and some fool's helping her." Gunshots cracked through the air, but Xander was already guiding the horse into a narrow wash where the walls rose steep on either side. The paint was sure-footed even at speed, and within moments they had put several bends between themselves and their pursuers. Luna clung to Xander's back, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. The horse's muscles bunched and released beneath her, and she could feel the controlled power in the way Xander rode, like he and the animal were parts of the same organism. They rode hard for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes, climbing into the foothills where the terrain became increasingly rugged. Finally, Xander slowed the paint to a walk and guided them into a hidden canyon where a small stream trickled between rocks and a few scraggly cottonwoods provided shade. He dismounted first, then helped Luna down. Her legs were shaking so badly she nearly collapsed, but Xander steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "Easy," he said quietly. "You are safe now. Catch your breath." Luna sank down onto a flat rock near the stream, her whole body trembling with shock and exhaustion and the desperate relief of still being alive. She watched as Xander led the paint to the water and let it drink, then loosened the saddle cinch. His movements were economical and practiced, and there was something reassuring about his calm competence. "Why did you help me?" she finally asked. "You don't know me. You've put your own life at risk for a stranger." Xander glanced at her, and for a moment something vulnerable flickered across his features before his expression smoothed out again. "Let us just say, I know what it is like to be backed into a corner by people who think might makes right," he said. "And I know what it is like to have nobody step in to help. The Carson brothers won't forgive this. They'll come after both of us now. They will certainly try." Xander finished tending to his horse and came to sit on another rock near Luna. He pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his dark hair. "I am going to be honest with you, Luna. This is not going to be easy. Marcus and Jacob Carson will not stop hunting you, and now they will be hunting me too. But I meant what I said. They will not touch you while I am alive to prevent it." Luna studied his face, searching for any sign that this was some kind of trick, or that he had ulterior motives like Wade Carson had. But all she saw was a bone-deep sincerity that made her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "I still don't understand why," she whispered. Xander was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke again, his voice was rough with old pain. "5 years ago, I had a younger sister. Her name was Catherine, and she was the best person I ever knew. Sweet, kind, always saw the good in people." He paused, his jaw working. "A man named Thomas Ridley worked for my father's ranch. Catherine was 16, and Ridley was 30 if he was a day. He convinced her he loved her, convinced her to run away with him. By the time I tracked them down, he had used her up and cast her aside in a brothel in Sacramento. She was so ashamed, so broken, that she took laudanum and never woke up." Luna's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh God, I'm so sorry." "I killed Ridley," Xander continued, his voice flat now. "I shot him dead in the street, and I would do it again, but it did not bring Catherine back. Nothing could bring her back. And I have spent every day since then thinking about how if just one person had stepped in, if just one person had helped her when she needed it most, she might still be alive." He looked directly at Luna. "So when I saw you standing on that edge, about to jump because some man tried to force himself on you and you defended yourself, I knew I could not ride away. I could not let another woman die because the men in her life failed to protect her. Tears were streaming down Luna's face now, hot and unchecked. I killed a man today. I took a life. That makes me a murderer. No, Xander said firmly. That makes you a survivor. Wade Carson was the youngest brother and by all accounts the cruelest. He has done to other women what he tried to do to you, except they were not strong enough or lucky enough to fight back. You did what you had to do to protect yourself, and there is no shame in that. Luna wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing dirt and tears across her cheeks. What happens now? We can't run forever. The Carsons own half the county. The sheriff is in their pocket. There's nowhere to go. There is always somewhere to go, Xander said, but running is not what I have in mind. I have been in Knight's Ferry for 3 weeks now, watching and waiting. I am a deputy United States Marshal, and I came here because there have been reports of the Carson brothers running stolen cattle and horses across state lines. That gives me jurisdiction, and it gives me the authority to bring them in. Luna's eyes widened. You're a lawman. I am. And you killing Wade in self-defense is not murder, it is justifiable homicide. But getting the local law to see it that way is going to be difficult when Marcus Carson owns the sheriff, so we need to be smart about this. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Luna looked at this man who had appeared out of nowhere and pulled her back from the edge of death. This stranger who had shared his deepest pain with her in a moment of raw honesty. Every instinct screamed that she was insane to trust anyone after what she had been through, but there was something in Xander Voss that called to something deep inside her. Yes, she heard herself say, I can trust you. Xander nodded slowly, and the smallest hint of a smile touched his lips. Good. Then here is what we are going to do. They stayed in the hidden canyon until dusk began to paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Xander had supplies in his saddlebags, and he shared jerky and hardtack with Luna while he outlined his plan. It was risky, maybe even foolhardy, but it was better than running blindly or waiting for the Carsons to hunt them down. The key, Xander explained, was documentation and witnesses. He had been building a case against the Carson brothers for weeks, talking to people they had victimized, documenting their thefts and violence. But he needed something concrete, something that would force the territorial governor to step in and override the corrupt local authorities. Wade's death might actually be the catalyst we need, Xander said, though his expression was grim. Marcus and Jacob will be out for blood, which means they will be angry and maybe careless. If we can bait them into doing something stupid in front of witnesses I can trust, we can finish this. You want to use me as bait, Luna said. It was not a question. I want to use both of us as bait, Xander corrected. They will be hunting for you, but now that I have helped you, they will come after me too. The difference is that I will be ready for them. Luna wrapped her arms around herself. The temperature was dropping as the sun set, and she was still wearing only the thin cotton dress she had put on that morning in her small cabin, back when her biggest worry had been how to scrounge together enough money for food. That felt like a lifetime ago now. Xander noticed her shivering and immediately shrugged out of his vest, handing it to her. Here, it is not much, but it will help. The vest was still warm from his body heat, and Luna pulled it on gratefully. It smelled like leather and sage and something uniquely masculine that made her hyper-aware of how close they were sitting. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. I know I keep saying it, but I mean it. You saved my life today. You saved your own life by choosing to live, Xander said. I just gave you another option. They fell into a comfortable silence, listening to the stream burble and the evening birds calling to each other. Luna found herself stealing glances at Xander's profile in the fading light. He was handsome in a rough-hewn way, all strong lines and weathered masculinity, but it was more than that. There was an integrity to him, a steadiness that made her feel safer than she had felt in months. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a while. "Of course." "You said you've been in Knight's Ferry for 3 weeks. Where were you before that?" "All over, mostly. I have been a marshal for 2 years, and before that I worked as a ranch hand, a trail guide, a few other things. After Catherine died, I could not stay at my father's ranch anymore. Every corner reminded me of her, so I left, and I have been moving ever since." "Do you ever get lonely? Always moving, never settling down?" Xander was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was so soft she almost missed it. "Every day." Luna's heart squeezed. She knew that loneliness, had felt it acutely since her father died and left her truly alone in the world. It was a hollow ache that no amount of activity or distraction could quite fill. "Me too," she admitted. Xander turned to look at her, and in the dim light his eyes seemed to glow with some internal fire. "You do not have to be lonely anymore, Luna. I meant what I said on that ridge. I want you to share your life with me, not throw it away. And I do not just mean for today or tomorrow. I mean for as long as you will have me." Luna's breath caught in her throat. "You barely know me. How can you say something like that?" "I know that you are brave enough to defend yourself against a man twice your size," Xander said. "I know that even when you thought the only choice left was to jump, you took a chance on a stranger offering his hand. I know that you loved your father despite his flaws, and that you have been fighting to survive in a world that has not been kind to you. That is enough. The rest we can learn together." Tears pricked at Luna's eyes again. "I don't have anything to offer you. I'm a fugitive now, running from men who want me dead. I don't have money or prospects or even a home. I'm just a girl who killed a man and is too stubborn to die." Xander reached out and gently took her hand. His palm was calloused and warm, and Luna felt a jolt of electricity at the contact. "You have yourself," he said quietly, "and that is more than enough." They rowed back toward Knight's Ferry under cover of darkness, approaching the town from the south where the businesses gave way to scattered homesteads. Xander knew a man named Henry Walsh, who ran a small horse ranch on the outskirts of town, someone he had already vetted as trustworthy and outside the Carson brothers' sphere of influence. The Walsh homestead was a modest operation with a sturdy house and a barn that had seen better days but was still functional. Henry himself was a weathered man in his 50s with kind eyes and the slow, careful movements of someone who had learned patience through working with animals. He answered Xander's knock holding a lantern, and his eyes widened when he saw Luna standing behind the Marshal. "Xander Voss, you have a talent for complicating your own life," Henry said, but he stepped aside and gestured them in. "I heard about Wade Carson. Word is spreading that some girl killed him and ran off. I assume this is her, Luna Kerrigan. Meet Henry Walsh," Xander said. "And yes, this is her. Wade tried to rape her and she defended herself. Now Marcus and Jacob want her dead, and they want me dead for helping her." Henry closed the door and set the lantern on a rough wooden table. "Well, when you go to war, you go big. Come on in and sit down. You both look like you could use some real food and coffee." Henry's wife, Martha, appeared from the back room, a stout woman with graying hair pulled into a tight bun. She took one look at Luna's exhausted face and immediately went into mothering mode, ushering her to the table and bustling around the kitchen to heat up leftover stew and slice bread. "You poor dear," Martha clucked. "You look like you have been through hell and back." Luna nearly broke down at the simple kindness in the older woman's voice. After months of struggling alone, of being treated like an obligation or a burden by the few people who had tolerated her father's debts, Martha's maternal warmth was almost too much to bear. They ate, and Xander laid out the situation for Henry and Martha. The Walshes listened grimly, exchanging glances that spoke of long years together and shared understanding. "The Carsons have needed killing for a long time," Henry said bluntly when Xander finished, "but they are careful. They always have alibis, always make sure any witnesses are too scared to talk. How do you plan to bring them down?" "I need to force them to make a mistake," Xander said. "And I need witnesses who are willing to testify when I do, people the territorial governor will believe." "The circuit judge is due in Knight's Ferry in 10 days, Martha said thoughtfully. "Judge Harrison. He is a fair man, not in anyone's pocket, if you could arrange for the Carsons to incriminate themselves in front of him." "That is a good thought," Xander said. "But we also need to stay alive for 10 days, which is going to be the hard part." "You can stay here," Henry offered immediately. "We have a room in the barn that is comfortable enough, and nobody comes out here unless they are buying horses. You would be safe." "That puts you at risk," Luna said, speaking up for the first time since they had arrived. "If the Carsons find out you are hiding us, they will burn this place to the ground and probably kill you both." "Then we will be careful not to let them find out," Martha said firmly. "Henry and I did not build this place just to cower every time some bully throws his weight around. You need help, and we are offering it. End of discussion." Luna felt tears threatening again and blinked them back hard. She was not used to people standing up for her, was not used to anyone caring whether she lived or died except as a matter of collecting debts. The Walsh's simple decency was almost harder to accept than the Carsons' cruelty, because she had no framework for understanding it. Xander caught her eye across the table and gave her a small nod, and somehow that simple gesture steadied her. She was not alone in this anymore. She had someone in her corner, maybe even several someones. The barn room turned out to be more comfortable than Luna had expected. It was small but clean, with a real bed frame and mattress, a washstand, and even a mirror on one wall. Henry explained that they sometimes had horse buyers stay overnight, so they had fixed up the space to be habitable. "I will sleep in the main barn," Xander said, setting down the few supplies he had brought in. "You take the room." "There is a bed big enough for 2, Luna pointed out, then immediately felt her face flame with embarrassment. "I just meant you do not have to sleep in the cold on my account. We could hang a blanket down the middle or something." Xander looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. "Are you sure? I do not want you to feel uncomfortable." "I feel safer when you are close," Luna admitted. "After today, I do not think I could sleep if I was alone." That was true, but it was not the whole truth. The whole truth was that something had shifted inside Luna the moment Xander pulled her onto his horse. Some part of her that had been locked away and frozen had started to thaw, and she found herself wanting to be near him in a way that went beyond just feeling protected. They worked out a compromise where Xander took the floor with extra blankets while Luna took the bed, but both of them knew it was a token gesture toward propriety. In reality, they were already bound together by circumstance and choice, by the simple fact that Xander had looked at her desperate moment and decided her life was worth saving. Luna lay in the darkness listening to Xander's breathing even out as he fell asleep, and she felt the tears she had been holding back all day finally come. She cried silently for her father and his wasted life, for Wade Carson and the terrible necessity of taking his life, for the future she had almost thrown away on that ridge. But mostly she cried with relief, with the overwhelming gratitude of still being alive and not being alone. "Luna." Xander's voice came soft from the darkness. "Are you all right?" She had thought she was being quiet, but apparently not quiet enough. "Yes, I am sorry, I did not mean to wake you." She heard rustling as Xander sat up. "You do not have to apologize for having feelings. Today was hell for you. You are entitled to cry. I keep thinking about what you said, Luna whispered. About sharing my life with you. I want to believe that is possible, that there is a future beyond just running and hiding, but I am so afraid to hope for it. More rustling, and then Xander was there beside the bed, kneeling so they were at eye level. In the faint moonlight coming through the window, she could just make out his features. Hope is terrifying, he said quietly, because hoping means risking disappointment. After Catherine died, I stopped hoping for anything. I just focused on the next task, the next criminal to catch, the next mile to ride. It was easier that way. He paused. But it was also empty, and today, when I saw you on that ridge, I realized I did not want to live an empty life anymore. I wanted to hope again. I wanted to believe that maybe I could make a difference, that maybe I could build something instead of just drifting. And I wanted to do it with someone who understands what it costs to keep fighting when everything tells you to quit. Luna reached out and touched his face, her fingers trembling as they traced the rough stubble on his jaw. I am afraid I will let you down. I am afraid I am not strong enough for what is coming. Xander turned his head and pressed a kiss to her palm, the gesture so tender it made Luna's heart ache. You are the strongest person I have met in a long time. You just do not see it yet, but I see it, and I will remind you every day if I have to. Luna slid over on the bed, making room. Will you lay with me? I do not want to be alone tonight. Xander hesitated only a moment before climbing onto the bed beside her, staying on top of the blankets while she was underneath. Luna turned on her side to face him, and they lay there in the darkness, so close she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Tell me something good, she whispered. Tell me about something beautiful you have seen in all your traveling. Xander was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he said, 2 summers ago, I was guiding a wagon train through Montana territory. We camped one night in a valley surrounded by mountains, and just after sunset the sky filled with the northern lights. I had never seen them before, and it was like watching heaven dance. All these ribbons of green and purple and blue, swirling and shifting across the stars. Everyone in the wagon train just stood there in silence, watching. Even the children were quiet. It felt like standing in the presence of something holy. Luna closed her eyes, imagining it. That sounds beautiful. It was. But you know what I thought about while I was watching it? What? I thought about how I wished I had someone to share it with. Someone who would understand how precious that moment was, who would stand beside me and feel the same wonder I was feeling. All around me were families, couples, people who had someone, and I was alone. His voice dropped even lower. I do not want to be alone anymore, Luna. And I do not want you to be alone either. Luna opened her eyes and found Xander watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Slowly, giving him time to pull away, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft and tentative at first, just a gentle brush of lips. But then Xander made a low sound in his throat and cupped the back of her head, deepening the kiss. Luna felt heat flood through her body, a warmth that had nothing to do with the blankets and everything to do with the way Xander was kissing her like she was precious, like she mattered. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Xander rested his forehead against hers, his hand still tangled in her hair. I have never felt like this before, Luna admitted. Is it crazy that I feel more for you after one day than I have felt for anyone in my entire life? If it is crazy, then we are both insane, Xander said roughly. Because I feel it too. I have felt it since the moment I saw you on that ridge, standing there so brave and so broken. Something inside me just knew. They kissed again, slower this time, learning the shape and taste of each other. Luna felt safe in a way she had not felt since she was a small child in her mother's arms. She felt wanted, not as an object or a means to settle a debt, but as a person, as herself. When they finally settled down to sleep, Luna was wrapped in Xander's arms with her head on his chest, listening to the steady thump of his heartbeat. She knew that the dangers had not gone away, that the Carson brothers were still out there hunting for them. But for this one night in this small room above a barn, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, there was hope after all. The next few days fell into a pattern. Xander would leave before dawn to move around Knight's Ferry, gathering information and making contact with other people he thought might be willing to testify against the Carsons when the time came. Luna stayed at the Walsh homestead, helping Martha with cooking and mending to earn their keep and staying out of sight whenever anyone came to look at horses. It was strange for Luna to be part of a household again, to have people to talk to and tasks to occupy her hands. Martha treated her like a daughter, and Henry was gruffly kind in the way of men who show affection through actions rather than words. In the evenings, Xander would return and share what he had learned, and they would plan their next moves. But it was the nights that Luna treasured most. The nights when she and Xander would lie together in the darkness, talking about their pasts and their hopes for the future. He told her about growing up on his father's ranch, about the dreams he had once had of building his own place someday. She told him about her mother, about the stories she used to tell Luna about the stars and the ocean she had grown up near in Massachusetts before heading west. They kissed often, but Xander was always careful not to push for more. Luna appreciated his restraint, even as part of her wanted to throw caution aside and lose herself in him completely. But she also understood that they needed to resolve the situation with the Carsons first, needed to make sure they had a future before they fully committed to it. On the 5th day, Xander came back to the homestead earlier than usual, his expression grim. Luna was hanging laundry with Martha, but she immediately dropped the sheet she was holding and hurried over when she saw his face. "What happened?" she asked. "Marcus and Jacob were in town today, asking questions. They are offering a $1,000 reward for information leading to your capture." Xander's jaw was tight. "They are also spreading word that I am a rogue Marshal who kidnapped you to extort money from them." "That is insane," Luna said. "No one will believe that. You would be surprised what people believe when there is enough money involved," Henry said grimly. He had been working nearby and had overheard. $1,000 is a fortune to most folks around here. "We need to accelerate the timeline," Xander said. "I was hoping to wait for the circuit judge, but if the Carsons find us before then, it will not matter. I need to force a confrontation now on my terms." "How?" Luna asked. Even though she suspected she already knew the answer, Xander looked at her and she saw the conflict in his eyes. "I need you to go into town with me. I need the Carsons to see us together, to know that you are under my protection. It will enrage them, and when they come after us, I will have witnesses ready to see them for what they really are." "That is too dangerous," Martha protested. "They will kill you both." "Not if I do this right," Xander said. "I have been talking to people, quietly building support. There are at least 20 men in Knight's Ferry who are sick of the Carsons' tyranny but have been too afraid to speak up. If they see someone standing up to Marcus and Jacob, if they see that the Carsons can be challenged, they will back me. I am certain of it." Luna felt her heart hammering, but she lifted her chin. "When do we go?" "Tomorrow. Saturday. The town will be busy, lots of people around." "That is exactly what we want." That night, Luna could not sleep. She lay in Xander's arms, listening to him breathe, memorizing the feeling of his body against hers. She was terrified of what tomorrow might bring, but she was also proud. For the first time in her life, she was not running from her problems or trying to make herself small and inoffensive. She was standing up, fighting back, and she had someone fighting beside her. "Are you scared?" Xander murmured into her hair. Yes, Luna admitted, but I am also ready. I am tired of hiding, tired of being afraid. Even if something goes wrong tomorrow, at least I will have tried. Xander tightened his arms around her. Nothing is going to go wrong. I promise you, Luna. I will protect you with my life if I have to. I know, she whispered. But promise me something else too. Promise me that if something does happen to me, you will not stop living. You will not go back to just drifting and surviving. You will find someone else to share your life with, someone who will watch the northern lights with you and make you happy. Luna, promise me, she insisted. Xander was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I promise, but only if you promise me the same thing. Luna turned in his arms so she could see his face in the darkness. There will not be anyone else for me. Even if I live to be 100, there will only ever be you. She kissed him then, pouring all her fear and hope and desperate love into it. Xander responded with equal intensity, his hands framing her face like she was something infinitely precious. The kiss deepened, became more urgent, and Luna felt the careful control they had both been maintaining start to slip. Xander, she breathed against his mouth. I want you. I want to be yours completely before we face whatever tomorrow brings. He pulled back just far enough to search her eyes. Are you sure? I do not want you to feel pressured, or Luna stopped his words with another kiss. I have never been more sure of anything. Please, I need this. I need you. What followed was tender and sweet and shot through with desperation. They came together like people who understood this might be their only chance, their only moment of perfect connection before the world intruded again. Xander was gentle with her, careful and patient, and when it was over, Luna lay in his arms feeling more complete than she had ever felt in her life. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. I know it is too soon and maybe I am crazy, but I love you, Xander Voss. Xander's arms tightened around her. You are not crazy, and I love you too, Luna Kerrigan. I think I have loved you since the moment you took my hand on that ridge. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time since her mother died, Luna felt like she was home. Saturday morning dawned clear and hot, the kind of day where the sun beat down mercilessly and the dust seemed to hang suspended in the still air. Luna dressed carefully in a skirt and blouse that Martha had lent her, trying to look respectable and confident even though her stomach was churning with nerves. Xander checked his guns twice, making sure they were clean and loaded. He wore his Marshal's badge pinned prominently on his vest, a clear statement of authority and intent. Remember the plan, he said to Luna as they prepared to ride into town. We go to the general store first, buy supplies like normal people. Let folks see you with me, see that you are not some desperate criminal but just a woman who defended herself. Then we head to the saloon where I know Marcus and Jacob will be. That is when things will get interesting. I trust you, Luna said and meant it. They rode into Knight's Ferry side by side, and Luna could feel eyes on them immediately. People on the street stopped and stared, whispers spreading like wildfire. She kept her head high, her posture straight, trying to project a confidence she did not entirely feel. The general store was run by a woman named Mrs. Patterson, a widow in her 60s who had known Luna's father. When Luna and Xander walked in, Mrs. Patterson's eyes widened with shock. Luna Kerrigan, she said slowly. I heard you were dead, or running for the border, or half a dozen other things. I am alive, Mrs. Patterson, Luna said steadily. And I am not running. Wade Carson attacked me in my own home and I defended myself. That is the truth. Mrs. Patterson looked between Luna and Xander, taking in the Marshal's badge and the protective way Xander stood just slightly in front of Luna. I believe you, she said finally. Wade Carson was a vicious man. Half the women in this town could tell stories about him, but they are all too scared of his brothers to speak up. She glanced toward the window nervously. "You are brave to come back here, or foolish, maybe both." "We are settling this today," Xander said. "One way or another, the Carsons' reign of terror ends now." They bought a few supplies they did not really need, more to establish normalcy than anything else. As they left the store, Luna saw a group of men watching from across the street. She recognized a few of them as people who had sometimes worked with her father, men who had never been brave enough to stand up to the Carsons, but who she hoped might find that courage today. The saloon was at the far end of Knight's Ferry's Main Street, a weathered building with peeling paint and batwing doors. Even from outside, Luna could hear the sounds of rough laughter and clinking glasses. Her mouth went dry, but she forced herself to keep walking beside Xander. They pushed through the doors together, and the noise inside immediately died down. Luna felt dozens of eyes swivel toward them, and she saw Marcus and Jacob Carson sitting at a table in the back corner. Marcus was the older brother, somewhere in his mid-30s, with cold blue eyes and a cruel twist to his mouth. Jacob was younger and bigger, a bear of a man with hands like hams and a reputation for violence. Both of them went very still when they saw Luna and Xander, the kind of stillness that preceded an explosion. "Well, well," Marcus said slowly, rising to his feet. "If it is not the whore who murdered my baby brother and the supposed lawman who helped her run." Every muscle in Luna's body tensed, but Xander's hand on her lower back kept her steady. "Luna Kerrigan is under the protection of the United States Marshal's office," Xander said, his voice carrying through the silent saloon. "She killed your brother in self-defense after he attempted to rape her in her own home. If you have a problem with that, you can take it up with the territorial court." "Self-defense," Marcus spat. "That is a convenient story. All I see is a murderer and a fool who is going to die right alongside her." Jacob started to rise, his hand moving toward his gun, but Xander was faster. His pistol was out and leveled at Jacob before the bigger man had cleared leather. "Do not do it," Xander said quietly. "I have killed men before, and I will not hesitate to do it again. But let us be clear about what is happening here. I am a federal marshal executing my duty. You are a criminal who has been running stolen livestock across state lines and terrorizing the citizens of this county. I have testimony from a dozen people documenting your crimes. So you can try to draw on me and die right here, or you can surrender peacefully and take your chances with a judge." "You are bluffing," Marcus said, but there was uncertainty in his eyes now. "Nobody in this town would dare testify against us." "I would." The voice came from near the bar. Luna turned and saw a man in his 40s standing up, a farmer named Thomas Brennan, whose daughter had been accosted by Wade Carson 2 years ago. "I would testify," Thomas said, his voice shaking but determined. "Wade threatened my daughter Sarah. She was 15 years old, and he told her that if she did not let him have his way, he would burn our farm to the ground. I paid him off to leave her alone, but I never forgot it." "And I would testify," another voice said. This one belonged to a young rancher named David Mills. "Jacob stole 20 head of my cattle last spring and threatened to kill me if I reported it." One by one, other voices joined in. A shopkeeper who had been forced to pay protection money. A widow whose husband had been beaten by Marcus Carson for standing up to him. A young man who had seen Jacob shoot an unarmed Mexican worker and had been threatened into silence. Luna felt tears stinging her eyes as she watched these ordinary people find the courage to speak up, to stand together against the fear that had ruled their lives for too long. Marcus and Jacob looked around the saloon with growing alarm as the chorus of voices grew louder. The power they had wielded through fear and violence was evaporating before their eyes, replaced by the collective strength of people who had finally had enough. "This is not over," Marcus snarled. "You think these sheep matter? You think their words mean anything? We own this town. We own the sheriff. You are a dead man, Voss, and your whore is dead too." Marcus went for his gun. Everything happened very fast after that. Xander's pistol barked once, twice, and Marcus went down with bullets in his shoulder and his gun hand. Jacob roared with rage and charged forward, but 3 men from the crowd tackled him before he could reach Xander and Luna. Within moments, the big man was pinned to the floor, cursing and spitting. The saloon erupted into chaos. Some people ran for the doors, while others crowded forward to help subdue the Carson brothers. Xander kept his gun trained on the 2 men, his expression carved from stone. "It is over," he said quietly. "Your reign of terror ends today." The sheriff, a corrupt man named William Fuller who everyone knew was in the Carson's pocket, came running into the saloon with his deputy. He took in the scene with wide eyes, clearly uncertain about which side to come down on. "Marshal Voss," he said carefully, "what is the meaning of this?" "The meaning, Sheriff Fuller, is that I am placing Marcus and Jacob Carson under arrest for multiple counts of theft, extortion, assault, and conspiracy to commit murder," Xander said. "And I am also placing you under arrest for accepting bribes and obstructing justice. If you try to draw that gun, I will shoot you where you stand." Fuller's hand had indeed been creeping toward his weapon, but he froze at Xander's words. The deputy, a young man named Sam who had always seemed uncomfortable with Fuller's corruption, actually looked relieved. "I will testify against Fuller too," Sam said quietly. "I can document every bribe he took, every time he looked the other way. I kept records just in case." By the time the dust settled, Marcus and Jacob Carson were in chains and being held in the town's small jail under guard by volunteers from among the townspeople. Fuller was in a cell beside them, cursing everyone within earshot. And Luna stood in the middle of the street, holding Xander's hand, hardly able to believe it was really over. People she barely knew came up to her to apologize for not helping sooner, to thank her for being brave enough to fight back. Mrs. Patterson hugged her and cried. Thomas Brennan shook Xander's hand and said he would never forget what the marshal had done for them all. The circuit judge arrived 6 days later, and the trial was held in the largest building in Knight's Ferry, which happened to be the church. Luna testified about Wade's attack and her desperate fight to defend herself. Xander presented his documentation of the Carson brothers' crimes, and one by one, the people of Knight's Ferry stood up and told their stories. The judge, a stern man named Harrison with no love for corruption, listened to everything with an increasingly dark expression. When the testimony was finished, he took less than an hour to deliberate. Marcus and Jacob Carson were sentenced to 20 years of hard labor in the territorial prison. Sheriff Fuller got 10 years, and Luna's killing of Wade was ruled justifiable homicide. She was free, truly free for the first time in months. That night, as the sun set over Knight's Ferry, Luna and Xander sat on the porch of the Walsh homestead and watched the sky turn gold and crimson. "What happens now?" Luna asked softly. "You are a marshal. You will have to move on to the next assignment eventually." Xander was quiet for a moment, and Luna felt her heart sink. She had known this was coming, had known that their time together had an expiration date. But knowing it and facing it were 2 different things. Then Xander reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, holding it out to her. It was a simple gold ring, worn but beautiful. "This was my mother's ring," he said quietly. "She gave it to me before she died and told me to give it to the woman I wanted to spend my life with." He turned to face Luna fully, his eyes intense and vulnerable. "I told you on that ridge that I wanted you to share your life with me. I meant it then, and I mean it even more now. Marry me, Luna. Be my wife. We will build a life together, somewhere far from here if you want, or right here if you prefer. I do not care where we go as long as we go together. Luna could not breathe, could not think, could only feel the overwhelming swell of love and hope and joy that threatened to burst out of her chest. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, Xander. Yes, I will marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her, deep and long and full of promise. Around them the world continued on, but in that moment they were the only two people who existed. They were married a month later in the same church where the trial had been held. Martha cried happy tears and Henry gave Luna away, gruff and proud. Half the town attended, these people who had found their courage and their community again through standing up to tyranny together. Xander resigned his position as Marshal, deciding that he had spent enough years chasing outlaws and that it was time to build something instead of just tearing down. With the reward money from bringing in the Carson brothers, plus contributions from grateful townspeople, he and Luna bought a small ranch just outside Knight's Ferry. It was not much, just a modest house and enough land for some horses and cattle, but it was theirs. The first year of marriage was hard in the way that all new beginnings are hard. They had to learn to live together, to navigate the small frictions and adjustments that come with sharing a life. But they worked through every challenge with patience and love, and with every passing day, Luna felt more certain that taking Xander's hand on that ridge had been the best decision of her life. Their first child, a son they named James after Xander's father, was born in the spring of 1878. Luna labored through the night with Martha at her side, and when she finally held her squalling, red-faced baby, she wept with a joy so profound it almost hurt. Xander was besotted with his son, this tiny human he had helped create. Luna would often find him in the nursery late at night, just sitting beside the cradle and watching James sleep with wonder on his face. "I never thought I would have this," he admitted to Luna one night as they lay together in bed, James finally asleep after a fussy evening. "After Catherine died, I thought I was destined to be alone, and now I have you and James and this life we are building. Sometimes I am afraid I will wake up and find it was all a dream." Luna reached over and took his hand, threading her fingers through his. "It is not a dream. It is real, and it is ours, and we are going to live every moment of it." 2 years later they had a daughter, Elizabeth, named for Luna's mother. She was a fierce little thing from the moment she was born, screaming her displeasure at being evicted from the warm comfort of the womb. Luna loved her with the same overwhelming intensity she loved James, and watching Xander with their daughter was a particular joy. He was so gentle with Elizabeth, so patient with her moods and demands. Their ranch prospered slowly but steadily. Xander proved to have a gift for training horses, and soon people were coming from surrounding counties to buy his animals. Luna managed their household and their finances, discovering that she had a knack for numbers and planning. Together they built something solid and lasting, a legacy they could pass on to their children. The people of Knight's Ferry did not forget what Xander and Luna had done. Luna was invited to join the Ladies' Aid Society and was frequently asked to help settle disputes or offer advice. Xander was elected to the town council and served as a voice of reason and integrity. They became pillars of their community, respected and loved. But the best moments were still the quiet ones, the evenings when the children were in bed and Luna and Xander would sit together on their porch, watching the sun set over the California hills. Sometimes they talked, and sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, holding hands and existing in each other's presence. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Xander surprised Luna by taking her on a trip north to Montana Territory. They left the children with Martha and Henry and rode for 2 weeks, following the path Xander had once taken as a wagon train guide. And on a warm summer night in a valley surrounded by mountains, they watched the northern lights dance across the sky. Luna stood wrapped in Xander's arms, watching the ribbons of color swirl and shift, and felt her heart so full she thought it might overflow. "You were right," she whispered. "It is like standing in the presence of something holy. The first time I saw this, I wished for someone to share it with," Xander said into her hair. "And now here you are. My wish came true." Luna turned in his arms and kissed him, pouring 10 years of love and gratitude and joy into it. When they broke apart, she smiled up at him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what? For seeing me on that ridge, for offering your hand, for believing I was worth saving." Xander cupped her face gently. "You saved yourself, Luna. You chose to live. I just gave you another option." "We saved each other," Luna corrected. "You said you were tired of being alone, tired of just drifting. I gave you a reason to stop, to build, to hope. We saved each other." Xander smiled, and in the dancing light of the aurora, his face was transformed into something almost otherworldly beautiful. "I suppose we did." They made love under the northern lights that night, slow and tender, and full of the deep knowledge that comes from years of learning each other's bodies and souls. And afterward, lying tangled together under the stars, Luna reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought them to this moment. If Wade Carson had not tried to force himself on her, if she had not fought back, if she had not been desperate enough to stand on that ridge ready to jump, she never would have met Xander. All the pain and fear and desperation had led to this, to a life richer and fuller than she had ever imagined possible. She did not forgive Wade Carson for what he had tried to do, and she did not regret killing him. But she understood now that even the darkest moments could contain the seeds of unexpected grace. That sometimes the worst thing that ever happened to you could also be the doorway to the best thing that ever happened to you. The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of their children's growth. James grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved the horses as much as his father did. Elizabeth was wild and fearless, always climbing trees or racing across the fields on her pony. They added another son, Michael, and then another daughter, Catherine, named for Xander's lost sister. With each child, Luna marveled at the expanding capacity of her heart. She had spent so much of her early life feeling alone and unwanted, convinced that she was meant to struggle through the world by herself. But now she was surrounded by love, by family, by a future that stretched out bright and full of possibility. There were hard times, of course. A drought one year that nearly broke them. Illness that swept through the valley and took several neighbors, though thankfully spared their own family. The constant work and worry that came with ranching and raising children. But through it all, Luna and Xander faced everything together, their partnership deepening with each challenge overcome. On Luna's 40th birthday, their children threw her a surprise party. The house was filled with friends and neighbors, with laughter and music, and more food than they could possibly eat. Luna stood in the middle of the chaos, watching her husband dance with their youngest daughter while their sons argued good-naturedly over who got the last piece of cake, and felt a contentment so profound it brought tears to her eyes. Martha, who was elderly now but still sharp as a tack, came to stand beside her. "You have built a good life," the older woman said quietly. "I am proud of you, Luna, and I am glad we could be a small part of your journey." Luna hugged her fiercely. "You were more than a small part. You and Henry gave us shelter when we had nowhere else to go. You believed in us when almost nobody else did. We would not be here without you." Martha patted her cheek. "You two would have found a way regardless. You are both fighters, but I am glad we could help." Later that night, after the party had ended and the children were in bed, Luna and Xander sat together on their porch in their customary spot. The stars were brilliant overhead, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of sage and wildflowers. "You ever think about that day on the ridge?" Xander asked suddenly. Luna was quiet for a moment, reaching back through the years. "Sometimes. It feels like it happened to a different person, someone I used to be but am not anymore. That girl was so broken, so desperate. She could not see any way forward except to end it all. And now—" Luna smiled. "Now I cannot imagine wanting to end this life. Even on the hardest days, even when everything seems to be going wrong, I am grateful to be here. Grateful to have you, to have our children, to have this home we built together." Xander lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. "I asked you to keep your life and share it with me. You have given me so much more than I ever dreamed possible." "We gave it to each other," Luna said. "That is what love is, I think. Not some grand dramatic gesture, but the daily choice to wake up and keep choosing each other. Keep building together. Keep hoping together." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Luna thought about all the moments that had led them here. The terror and the triumph. The pain and the joy. The simple accumulation of days that had somehow added up to a lifetime. "You have any regrets?" Xander asked. Luna considered the question carefully. "I regret that my father could not see past his own demons to build a better life. I regret that Catherine never got the chance to grow up and find her own happiness. I regret that so many people in Knight's Ferry suffered for so long before someone finally stood up to the Carsons." She paused. "But I do not regret the path that brought us together. I do not regret any of the hard things we have been through, because they made us who we are." "I feel the same way," Xander said quietly. "Every mistake, every loss, every moment of pain led me to that ridge where you needed someone and I needed purpose. I would not change any of it." As they sat together under the stars, Luna thought about the girl she had been standing on that edge, ready to throw her life away because she could not see any other option. She wished she could go back and tell that girl that there was hope, that there was a future worth fighting for. But she also knew that words alone would not have been enough. That girl needed someone to reach out a hand and offer a choice, needed someone to see her worth when she could not see it herself. Xander had been that someone. He had looked at her desperate moment and decided she deserved a second chance. And in giving her that chance, he had found his own redemption, his own path back to living instead of just surviving. The years continued their steady march. James got married to a sweet girl named Sarah from a neighboring ranch, and within a year, Luna became a grandmother. Holding her grandson for the first time, she understood in a new way the continuity of life, the way love and hope passed down through generations. Elizabeth shocked everyone by deciding to become a teacher, moving to Sacramento to attend a women's college. She wrote long letters home about her studies and her dreams of opening a school for girls in rural areas. Luna was so proud of her fierce, independent daughter that she cried every time she read one of those letters. Michael took to ranching like he was born to it, working alongside his father and eventually taking over more and more of the daily operations. And little Catherine, true to her namesake, had a gift for seeing the good in people and bringing out their best selves. She became the heart of their family, the one everyone turned to when they needed comfort or wisdom. As Luna and Xander grew older, they settled into the comfortable rhythms of a long marriage. They knew each other's thoughts before they were spoken, could communicate volumes with a single glance. The passion of their early years had mellowed into something deeper and more sustaining, a love that was woven into the very fabric of their daily lives. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children organized a celebration at the ranch. Friends and family came from all over the county, and the party stretched late into the night. Luna danced with Xander under the stars, moving slowly to music played by a fiddle and guitar, and felt like the luckiest woman alive. 25 years, Xander mused as they swayed together. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like we just got started. I hope we have at least 25 more, Luna said, resting her head on his shoulder. I hope we have 50 more, Xander replied. I never want to stop dancing with you. They did not get 50 more years, but they got close. They grew old together, their faces weathering and their hair turning silver, their bodies slowing down but their spirits still bright. They became the kind of elderly couple that young people looked at and wondered if they would ever find a love that deep and lasting. Luna was 73 when Xander died. It was peaceful, a heart that simply gave out after decades of faithful service. He went to sleep in their bed one night and did not wake up. And while Luna grieved the loss of him with every fiber of her being, she was also grateful that he had not suffered, had not lingered in pain or confusion. She buried him on their land, under an old oak tree where they used to sit and watch the sunset. The whole community turned out for the funeral, sharing stories of Xander's kindness and integrity, his quiet strength and unwavering principles. Luna lived another 5 years after Xander's death. She was surrounded by family, by children and grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. But she was also lonely in a way that no amount of company could quite fill. Half of her soul had been ripped away when Xander died, and while the remaining half kept functioning, it was incomplete. On a warm spring morning in 1926, 78-year-old Luna Kerrigan Voss sat on her porch and looked out at the land she and Xander had built their life on. The ranch was prosperous now, run by Michael and his sons. The house had been expanded and modernized. But the bones of it, the foundation that she and Xander had laid together, were still there. She thought about that day on the ridge, 50 years ago now, when she had been ready to throw everything away. She thought about the stranger on a paint horse who had reached out his hand and offered her a choice. And she thought about all the moments that had followed, the accumulation of days that had added up to a life beyond her wildest dreams. Her children found her later that afternoon, still sitting on the porch with a peaceful smile on her face. She had died quietly, painlessly, simply choosing her moment to stop and rest. They buried Luna beside Xander under the oak tree, and on her headstone they carved the words he had spoken to her that first day. "Share your life with me instead." The ranch continued on, passing through the generations. Luna and Xander's descendants spread out across California and beyond, carrying with them the story of the desperate girl and the cowboy who saved each other. It became a family legend, a testament to the power of hope and courage and love. And sometimes, on warm summer nights, people swore they could see 2 figures sitting on the old porch, holding hands and watching the stars, their love eternal and undiminished by the passage of time. Whether it was real or just wishful thinking, nobody could say for certain. But it was a beautiful story, and stories like that have a power all their own in the end. Luna Kerrigan had taken Xander Voss's hand and chosen to live, and that choice had rippled out across decades and generations, touching countless lives. She had been brave enough to hope when hope seemed impossible, strong enough to fight when fighting seemed futile, and wise enough to accept love when it was offered. And that, more than anything else, was the true happy ending of her story. Not that everything was perfect or easy, but that she had lived fully, loved deeply, and left the world richer for her presence in it. She had shared her life with the man who had asked for it, and together they had built something beautiful and lasting. Their love story became the stuff of legend in Knight's Ferry, passed down through generations as an example of what was possible when people chose courage over despair, connection over isolation. The old oak tree where they were buried became a local landmark, and young couples would sometimes come to sit beneath its branches and make wishes for their own futures. The ranch itself remained in the family for over a century, eventually becoming a historic property that offered tours and told the story of the Voss family and their role in shaping the community. Luna's great-great-grandchildren would walk visitors through the old house, pointing out the original structure that Luna and Xander had built with their own hands, and they would tell the story of the desperate girl and the cowboy whose love had started it all. In the end, Luna had not thrown her life away on that ridge. She had taken a chance on a stranger's kindness, and that chance had blossomed into something extraordinary. She had learned that even in our darkest moments, there is possibility. That even when we cannot see a way forward, sometimes all we need is someone to offer their hand and walk beside us. And she had proven that love, real love, is not about grand gestures or perfect moments. It is about choosing each other every single day, about building something together piece by piece, about facing the world as partners rather than alone. Luna Kerrigan Voss lived a long, full, beautiful life. And it all started with a simple choice on a dusty ridge in California, when a broken girl took the hand of a lonely cowboy and decided to hope one more time. Their story was one of redemption and second chances, of finding light in the darkest places and building joy from the ruins of despair. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of love. And it was, in the end, exactly the kind of story that deserved to be told and retold, passed down through generations as a reminder that no matter how desperate things seem, there is always a chance for a new beginning. All we have to do is be brave enough to reach out and take it. The legacy of Luna and Xander Voss lived on long after they were gone, woven into the very fabric of Knight's Ferry and the families they touched. Their love story was not just about two people finding each other. It was about an entire community finding its courage, about ordinary people standing up against tyranny, about the ripple effects of choosing hope over despair. And somewhere in whatever comes after this life, Luna and Xander were together still, watching the northern lights dance across an eternal sky, their hands entwined and their hearts at peace. They had lived well, loved deeply, and left behind a legacy that would endure. That was their happy ending, and it was more than enough.